You know, for an activity that was derived from military service and making sure that service members are fit enough to accomplish their missions, it's soldiers, military service members in general, that seem to get it wrong when it comes to rucking the most. It seems that soldiers are the #1 culprit of saying stupid shit about ruck marching. A lot of times it isn't their fault. It's either what they were told through their leadership, right? Tips and tricks from their leadership that was just all jacked up. Sometimes they just don't go through the proper training protocols for healthy progression, and they end up hurting themselves, banging themselves up, severely overtraining themselves when they're training up for something that's going to be ruck intensive. Soldiers are often beat to the ground when it comes to training in general, so why should it be any different when it comes to rucking? There's got to be something to blame for their injuries after years of service, for their lack of ability to increase in progression. There's got to be something to blame, right? And a lot of times the blame falls on the activity of rucking, and it's wrong. So in today's video, we're going to dispel some of the myths you might have heard out there in regard to rucking. All right, some of the things you might have heard, whether you're a service member, whether you're just a high-speed civilian out there trying to get their rucking on, you're just looking for a good way to get your cardio in or burn some extra calories. Doesn't really matter. Whatever found you here on this video, you have some sort of interest in rucking. Well, I'm going to set the record straight of all the bad and negative things you've heard and let you know what the truth and the reality is when it comes to rucking. And long story short, if you just want to end the video now, it is absolutely good for you if you do it right. But you don't want to end the video now because you want the knowledge. You're going to keep going. First, you're going to like and subscribe because that really does help this channel a lot, and it makes a lot more people out there that need this information actually see it. So please don't forget to like and subscribe before we move forward, and please do your best to stay for the whole video. I'm going to keep it brief, and I'm going to make it chock full of valuable information just for you. So please like and subscribe, stay for the video. Here we go. So this is probably the #1 thing you're going to hear about rucking, and that is that rucking will do nothing for you besides break down your body. You hear it all the time, especially with soldiers, veterans especially. You know, they have that VA rating, their knees are blown out, their back's blown out, and they have nobody else to blame, nothing else to blame besides their time under a very heavy rucksack. First of all, I'll say there's a lot of other reasons why a soldier or a veteran might have bad knees or a bad back. Trust me, especially if you're in the airborne. A rucksack might not even be part of your daily repertoire as a soldier, and you'll still end up with bad knees or a bad back, and that's for a plethora of reasons. So that aside, let's stick with why rucking might have caused that for them. Let's just say it actually is the culprit, and why. First of all, for soldiers or service members who are in some sort of combat-related job field especially, they will most likely end up rucking a lot throughout their career. And when they ruck, they're gonna ruck with packs that are way too heavy. They may or may not have ever been trained properly on how to pack out their ruck, so they might be lopsided the majority of the time. They might have stuff hanging off the back, which is gonna drag more on their back, which is gonna mess up their back. They might not be afforded or know to take the appropriate amount of rest in between ruck marches so that they can heal and recover, ready for the next one. Or they just might have had that severely high-speed mentality of thinking that more is better, and they might have been training up to either just be a really good warfighter, or maybe they were trying to go to ranger school or some sort of selection or something else that's going to require them to perform for a long time underneath a heavy rucksack. So they trained way too much, way too often, and they just ended up hurting themselves for it. And not only all those things, but it hasn't even been until recently that soldiers or service members in general have been afforded good information in regard to recovery and nutrition in general throughout their career. So they might have just been rucking with a body that was less than optimized as it was, and they just didn't set themselves up for success, whether they meant to or not, when it came to endurance activities such as rucking. So there's a plethora of reasons on how a soldier, a military service member, a veteran might have actually hurt themselves legitimately through rucking. Now, if you look at all those things, it wasn't actually the activity itself that caused that. It was the execution of the activity of rucking, right? They just didn't do it correctly. Understanding that, what is correctly? What do I mean when I say that? Well, you might ask a lot of soldiers, a lot of people out there that just like the activity of rucking, that think they know what correctly is, and this is no shot to them. They just may or may not know, or they just might be more high speed than they should be for their own good. Sorry, I stuttered a little bit there. But some of the really bad advice that I've heard over the years, I'm sure you've heard it. Hopefully you're not somebody who has dished this out. Maybe you are, but you'll learn today that that's not the right answer, is to say something to the effect of just ruck more and you're gonna get better at rucking. Or just load up more weight in your ruck. That way you don't have to go faster. You'll just get better by carrying more and more weight. Carry as heavy weight as you possibly can. That'll be the ticket. That'll get you there. I've even heard people recommend wear ankle weights while you're out there on your ruck march to simulate the terrain or something like that. And one of the things that I really hate the most is don't wear your waistband or your chest band. That's for nerds. All those things are horrible advice. They're so simple, but they could cause so many big issues if somebody actually listens to that advice and executes their training based off those things. So what do we really want to do? Well, first, you absolutely don't want to just ruck more blindly, right? That doesn't work for any sort of training regimen. Why would it work for something like this? If you're trying to get better at rucking, you need to be following a dialed down rucking plan with integrated and deliberate recovery spread throughout. Now there's multiple forms of planning. You know, I'll use this as a pitch real quick. We actually have one of the best ruck marching plans you're gonna find out there called Embrace the Ruck at GrittySoldier.com. If you're looking for a plan, go there. Okay, I'll drop a link in the description for you. You can go check it out and get yourself an awesome rucking plan so you don't mess yourself up. But anyway, I digress. Let's continue. And I wanna tell you that there's a lot of different plans out there, okay? But what you're really looking for is something that is actually pretty similar or comparable to a really good running plan. So what does that mean? It means that you want to have one day a week, nothing more than that, that's focused on intensity. Now, intensity can look like something to the effect of for speed, so you're run rucking or you're really stepping it out to go as fast as possible, or it can be going a little heavier that day than you would for the majority of your rucking sessions. Again, only one day a week would you do that, and you don't want to go, in my opinion, any heavier than like 50 to 55 pounds, unless you're training for something very specific, you know, that's gonna require you to be out there with like 100 pounds for days on end. You don't need to be training anything more than 50 to 55 pounds. It's really gonna be more counterproductive for you if you start going any heavier than that, okay? And when it comes to ruck running, which I'm a big advocate for, you wanna be keeping around a speed of 10 to 11 miles per hour. That's what I've found to be the sweet spot, all right? That helps you to make sure that you're keeping good form, you're keeping your foot plant appropriate so that you're not banging your body all around, and you're able to control the weight as it's bouncing up and down inevitably on your back. But that's also why it's so important to wear your chest strap and your waist strap. That's why I hate it when people say that. It could really mess you up if you don't do that. It just makes the ruck bounce even more. It's gonna throw off your center of gravity. Your joints just aren't built to be having this big old pack on your back all over the place and be able to control it like that. You gotta have it, you gotta make your rucksack as close to as part of you as you possibly can. It should move with the body as you're moving with the ruck, especially when it comes to run rucking. So one day for high intensity, 2 days out of the week, all right, maximum of 3, but I wanna say 2 days out of the week, that's when you're just gonna be doing your normal rucks, okay? You're building your endurance, you're building that bone density, you're building up that engine, that cardiovascular engine and your VO2 max, and you're doing that through low intensity rucking. So you're gonna go out there for a distance that you're more or less comfortable with, like you're pretty confident you're gonna make that distance just fine without like passing out or really going too hard on yourself. You should be out there, your rucking pace should be something where you can keep a conversation with a friend, something like what I'm doing now, where I'm actually able to make a YouTube video and get out here and get my training in at the same time. All right, it's not too intense. And your weight should be something manageable, okay? Now, for soldiers, the standard is about 35 pounds dry. That's before you add any water or food weight, just 35 pounds of equipment. But if you're somebody who's new to rucking, or if you're just like a small person, a good rule of thumb is 20% of your body weight, okay? That's a good starting point when you're looking at how much weight you should be carrying for low intensity ruck marching. And then a speed standard, okay, if you're really just like, well, I don't really know what conversational pace looks like. Really, you're striving for on or around a 15-minute mile for however long you're training that day, okay? Now, if that requires you to kind of jog it out a little, and then step it out a little, jog it out a little, step it out a little, no problem. Just try to keep it not so intense. Definitely nowhere near that high intensity day, all right? So now we're at 3, possibly 4 rucking workouts for the week. You can go ahead and add one more rucking workout for that week, and that one's gonna be all focused on distance. Your distance day is gonna be no faster than those 2 easy days, all right? You're gonna keep it at that level or slower. You're gonna take breaks when you need to. It's all about just pushing a little further than you do normally throughout the week. And this is where you're really gonna make your money. This is where you can increase that distance every week or every other week, depending on your plan. And you'll see your distance progress over time as you do this, while making sure you're not overtraining or pushing your limit too fast, too furious, so that you end up injuring yourself and you can't continue training. So that's just like a basic snapshot of the max of rucking that you should be doing in a week if you're a normal type of person. Now, if you've been doing this for a long time, if you're an endurance athlete, you know, if you've just got everything already figured out and you're watching this, then obviously there are some, you know, tweaks that you can make to that plan. But for the majority of people, that plan right there is gonna work very well for you. Now I want to wrap everything up by throwing in some things that you must do, some habits that you need to start building for yourself now in order to negate any future lack of recovery or instigate any injuries, all right? So you can continue on with your rucking journey and not have to face any negative side effects that were self-inflicted. First of all, and I've already kind of mentioned this, I've already displayed my dismay with this sort of comment, and that is absolutely wear your waistband and your chest band. You want to have it tight enough where it's helping to secure the entire rucksack to your body, but not so tight that it's cutting off your breathing, okay, or any circulation, obviously, okay? So a little bit of looseness. I say you should be able to, you know, fit 2 fingers in there, but no more than that, okay? So enough, like I said, enough where that you can breathe, but not enough where it's gonna make the ruck actually stay at one with your body and the movement that you're putting it through. Along with that, you want to make sure that the rest of your ruck is set up properly, okay? You want to make sure that it's packed out properly. The most heavy portion of your ruck should be at the top of your ruck and closest to your shoulders. And it should be all spread out evenly. You don't want one side of the ruck weighing more than the other, because if that happens, you're putting more weight strain on one side of the body than the other. And over time, obviously, that's going to cause issues. So you don't want to do that. You want everything to be spread out evenly. Weight distribution is very important. And again, heaviest items are the top and closest to the back. To know when you've got it right, okay, because everybody's body is a little different, you need to experiment with the ruck a little bit. Put the straps a little higher sometimes, a little lower sometimes, right in the middle, okay? Pack out your ruck a little differently here and there until you get to that feeling of in between when the ruck and the weight is so off that it's pulling you back, okay? If my weight was all the way at the bottom, it'd be pulling me back and throwing off my posture. Or if it's too much at the top, it's gonna start pressing me down. So now I'm walking like an old man, right? Also throwing off my posture. If you get it just right, which is where I told you, but experiment for your own body, it will keep you at an appropriately and naturally aligned posture position. So it's actually gonna help you, if you do it right, with your posture as you're out there doing your rucking. How awesome is that? You should definitely be warming up and cooling down after every ruck march. Now, this doesn't have to be anything fancy, okay? It really doesn't. But before you throw your ruck on, just do a few leg swings, okay? Maybe do a few air squats. You wanna do active stretching, okay? Not like that static stretching where you're just getting a nice stretch, okay? It's active stretching where you're just moving the body, loosening up the joints, making sure everything's primed and ready to go before you start putting it through some punishment. Okay, that's your active stretching. You should be doing that for like a minimum of 5 minutes, and that's really minimum, but really aiming for about 10 to 15 minutes of that. And then after your ruck, you really want to focus on static stretching, okay? That's when you're doing your 1 to 2 minutes of static hold stretches. You're doing your standing hamstring stretches. You're doing your quad stretches. You're doing your core stretches. You really need to be stretching out the entire body, but you know, truth be told, I think most of the focus should be on your legs, and you want to hit every muscle group on your legs if possible, and you should be stretching for about 10 to 15 minutes. Pretty easy, right? I know we all do it. We're all tempted to be lazy and skip the stretching. I do it sometimes too, okay? But it is so important to do that, not only to stop from injuries happening, but it will also help you with your recovery. It's gonna help you get stronger faster if you actually loosen up the tension in those muscles after a good workout. So there is like actual benefit to stretching if performance is your goal. You're missing out on potential performance if you don't do your stretching. So try to remember that next time you're feeling lazy. You also need to make sure you're staying hydrated. Rucking itself burns around 100 to 150 calories per mile that you're out there rucking. And that really just depends on how much weight you're carrying, how fast you're going, the weather, even the terrain. It could be even more, but it's not gonna be any less, okay? So you have to make sure that you're hydrating appropriately because your body is just working overtime as you're out there doing your rucking. And if you're not hydrating the muscles out as you're out there, they are gonna be susceptible to cramps, they're gonna be susceptible to strain, and you're gonna end up hurting yourself in the long run, if not during that session. So super important to hydrate, not just water, but also your minerals as well. And you also wanna make sure that you're getting in nutrition if you're gonna be out there for any more than, I wanna say, probably 5 miles. You need to make sure that you have some sort of nutrition with you. And that's mostly in the form of carbs, okay? Because like I said, you're burning that many calories, you're burning a certain amount of carbs every hour. But if you didn't know, your body's actually reliant on those carbohydrates as the main source of energy as you're out there doing cardio. And if you're doing anything more than a few miles, you're gonna start dipping into those energy reserves, which is really gonna start doing more harm than good on your body, okay? You're gonna start losing muscle mass. Your energy systems are not gonna be as efficient as they would be if they actually had those carbohydrates and that glycogen available in that moment when it's needed most. And so you have to make sure that you are restoring those carbohydrates as you move. And it can't just be like on the fly, okay? It kind of has to be beforehand, so you have to preload. Long story short, don't be afraid to eat your carbs, all right? Even if you're on a diet, you're trying to ruck to lose some weight, remember what I said, it's 100 to 150 calories at minimum you're burning per mile when you're out there rucking. Okay, so that's a lot of calories. All right, now once you're out at that 5 mile mark, you've already burned plenty of calories for weight loss purposes, okay? It's okay to put a little bit back just to make sure your body is sustaining itself appropriately and you continue on with your performance. Make sure you're wearing the right footwear, all right? My favorite are Garmin NFSs. These are military AR 670-1 compliant boots, but they're also just my favorite. They're the most comfortable, they're lightweight. These are my go-to boots, and I also like to wear the Fox River Fatigue Fighters. I will drop a link in the description to those things if you are so inclined, you're looking for some footwear for yourself. That's my go-to, and I recommend that to everybody out there looking for a new go-to for themselves. And another really good brand out there, if you're not somebody who's really into, you know, calf-high socks or really thick socks, is a brand called Ruck socks. They are 100% dedicated to making the best ruck sock on the market, and they are made with 100% merino wool, manufactured in the US. I actually know the owners, great guys. They're totally dedicated to the mission, and I've been wearing those a lot lately, and they are slowly, not quite there, but they're definitely my second to first, right? They're almost the go-to. I can't let go of the Fox Rivers yet, but hey, if you're not into the Fox Rivers, definitely try the Ruck socks. Those things are money, all right? I'll drop a link to those in the description as well, and I even have a coupon code for that one. You also want to make sure you're mixing up your locations as frequently as possible, okay? Don't just stick to asphalt if you're in the city, if you can help it, or just flat woods terrain if you can help it. If you're really trying to maximize your rucking potential and get the most out of the exercise, you want to mix it up, all right? Get out there, find some hills, some elevation changes, you know, maybe some rough terrain. Be careful, you know, you don't want to ruck on the rocks too much, but you do want to mix it up because the more you mix it up on uneven terrain and terrain that's just not like sidewalk, right, or asphalt, over time it's going to help you to become stronger and more adaptable at the ankles and at the knees, at the joints, right? As long as you don't overdo it, you don't want to overdo it, but slowly working up towards those things, your joints are going to be stronger and more adaptable after going through all that uneven terrain. So you want to try to do that as much as you possibly can. But of course, proper footwear is going to come into play there. So you can't just go out there with some Nikes. You got to get yourself some rugged, ruck marching appropriate boots and make it happen that way. You also want to make sure you're integrating some sort of strength routine, okay? Now, it doesn't need to be going to the gym every other day. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. In fact, that's probably going to be counterproductive to you. But you at least need to be getting in some calisthenics, maybe 1 to 2 days a week. Definitely training the legs, okay? Because the stronger your legs are, the more efficient they're going to be and the more load they're going to be able to carry for longer periods of time. All right, so strength does come into play when you want to be able to perform well with rucking, and really with cardio in general. You also want to make sure that you're emphasizing training on the core, because a lot of rucking, actually, it's not just a leg exercise. There's a lot of dependence on the core when you're carrying a load on your back like this and making sure that you can stand upright and keep that good posture. A lot of that's stemming from right here. Okay, so you want to have a nice strong core. You know, you don't have to have like an 8-pack or anything like that. Not saying that, but you definitely want to show the core some love here and there. All right, I would not advise that you just throw a 35-45 pound weight plate in your ruck and make your weight out that way. Okay, that's not that's not ideal, because it's going to be really hard to achieve proper weight distribution in that way. Even though it does seem, if you put like a bumper plate back there, you're like, okay, the weight is equally distributed. Not really, because it's just going to be hanging off your back, because too much of the weight is going to be past the middle point of the ruck once you pack it out, and it's just not going to sit right. Okay, so I would advise packing it out with materials that seem, you know, appropriate for a ruck march. A lot of times what I'll do is just bring bottles of water, stack that at the top. Sometimes I'll fill up the top with a bunch of MREs, because those things, you know, are 1 pound to 2 pounds a piece, so you can just load up the top of the ruck like that. And I want to say, you don't want to have anything that weighs more than 10 pounds if you can help it, if you get to decide, and you don't want to have it any bigger than like a 2-quart canteen. So that way you can really place everything exactly where it needs to be, and you can maximize that weight distribution. I also think you should get the appropriate pack. Okay, you don't want to just be rocking a backpack. If that's all you got and you're broke and you want to go out there and try rucking, then use your backpack, but try to pack it out appropriately. But if you can help it at all, get yourself a military style ruck, or at least something like a backpacking ruck, something that's meant to carry the weight that you're going to put in it and still sit comfortably on your back. Okay, that really that should indicate to you that there is a purpose between the different styles of backpacks out there. If you want a good military style ruck, you can definitely get some from your local military surplus or eBay, something like that. A good go-to ruck nowadays, modern ruck, is the Molly 2. Okay, another really good one is the Alice pack. That's kind of like your Vietnam era pack. It's a steel frame. Okay, it's going to be not meant for everybody, but it's definitely dependable, and it can be very comfortable if your back is shaped the right way. And then a pack that I really like, a brand that I really like, that I've been using for years, and it's my go-to brand now. Actually, this version is my go-to ruck, is Crossfire packs. All right, this is the CF3 from Crossfire Packs, and this is what I use twice now for the fan dance out in Wales. It's what I use for all of my rucks, unless I'm training specifically or I'm at work or something like that. If I get a choice in my rucksack, this is what I'm wearing. All right, I will drop a link to them in the description as well for you guys. Rucking is actually one of the best workouts you can do for yourself, whether you're looking to increase your overall strength, your endurance, your aerobic capacity. It blends all those things together and gives you the total package. Rucking is great for burning extra calories. It's great for losing weight. If you're trying to burn off a little extra fat, or maybe you're trying to burn off a lot of extra fat, this is one of the best things you can be doing. It's super low impact, far more low impact than running. You can get out there and enjoy your time in the woods. It's gonna help you to build up that bone density over time, and if you're doing it right and you're packing out correctly and carrying your ruck correctly, you're gonna end up with better posture for it. And those are just some of the physical things. It helps with mental clarity. Every time I come out here and I go for a ruck march, I feel so much better. I get out here, I get some sunshine, I get some fresh air, I get some alone time, I get some time with you guys, and I'm out here getting my cardio in for the day, getting my spirituality on for the day out here in the wilderness, right? I mean, you can't do this in a gym. You're not gonna feel the same way. There's so many benefits. It's kind of ridiculous, and they're perfectly counter to a lot of the negative things you would hear out there that are just not true. So hopefully I have dispelled a lot of those negative myths out there, all right? If there was one that I missed, I'm sure there is, because it's just like, oh, it's like so toxic, all these negative rucking myths out there. If I missed one, please drop that in the comments. I wanna make sure that I hit it, okay? So I will answer any questions that you might have. If you have something you're unsure about, you want answers from me to explain it to you, please drop that in the comments as well. And of course, if you have any advice or tips or tricks yourselves when it comes to rucking, please drop that in the comments as well for the group, because the more information we have on the channel, the better. If you are a soldier watching this video and you are somebody who is guilty of spreading that misinformation, I would please ask you to stop, or at least do some more research or analyze, do some self-reflection before you spew that toxicity out there in the world, because there are tons of people out there that have found huge benefits, life-changing benefits from getting out there and rucking on the reg, okay? Trust me, I'm one of them. And the last thing we want is to stifle potential opportunity for people to get out there and benefit their lives, especially due to some sort of misinformation, okay? So stop doing that. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found any of this information useful to you. That really does help me out a lot, and it helps a lot of other people on YouTube that are trying to find this information out a lot as well. So it's the least you could do, all right? So don't forget to like and subscribe. And besides all that, remember, stay motivated, stay disciplined, most importantly, stay gritty, and I will see you on the next one.